It was on the gray morning of April 26th, 1933, that Thaddeus Gorrell first glimpsed the mist-shrouded hills of Dunwich through the cracked windowpane of a rattling bus. A scholarly yet unrenowned explorer of esoteric phenomena and religious folklore, he had come chasing whispers, regardless of their origin. Local newspapers spoke of stars vanishing from the night sky with no astronomical explanation, and cryptic second-hand tales swirled around an abandoned barn nestled in the far fields northeast of town, one older than memory. Thaddeus, possessed by both ambition and superstition, believed the path to fame was paved not with cautious inquiry, but bold descent into the wondrous and accursed. Dunwich, with its stunted trees twisted from relentless wind, and its villagers who watched strangers with sunken, suspicious eyes, felt immediately like forbidden ground. Exactly the kind of place destined to make legends or corpses. The path up to the barn was overgrown, but not untouched. Fresh impressions marred the wet earth, and shattered stalks told of hurried midnight pilgrimages. The barn looked on the verge of collapse. Its gabled roof was bowed and half covered in lichen. The boards of its exterior were mold-eaten gray, and the weather-beaten door creaked against its own rusted hinges. But within that decay pulsed a hidden vitality. As he stepped inside, the stillness tightened its grip on his lungs, and the barn swallowed the morning light until all lay in a dusty half-dark. He heard it early, soft rhythmic murmurs like wind caught in a chimney flue, but wrong. The whispers curled around the wooden beams above, undecipherable, yet laden with meaning too heavy for the mind. The air turned damp and sweet, rotted hay and thick mildew, but beneath it was something else, a metallic scent, reminiscent of burnt ozone. Thaddeus ascended the narrow ladder to the loft, ignoring every visceral protestation from his instincts. The second he peeked over the upper level, a jolt of irrational certainty struck him. Something had been waiting here. The loft was strewn with broken crates and nests of moth-eaten cloth. Amid the detritus lay a cleared circle where the straw was blackened and fused in places, as if seared by great heat. Within this circle, intricate diagrams had been inscribed, not drawn, but etched, into the wood and burned into the straw. Astronomical symbols, familiar yet misaligned. A twisted facsimile of the zodiac, wheeled inwards toward an impossibly knotted spiral. A brass oil lantern rested nearby, its glass shattered, and pages of scorched parchment fluttered nearby, their ink long smeared into unintelligible veins, and beside it, all too recent bedding, stained sacks piled into the crude shape of a cot. Warm still, if he dared test it. As he stared, the whispers resolved, for a moment, into something coherent. A single sentence hissed between the wooden slats. He watches from where the stars used to be. Thaddeus swallowed hard. Fame had a price, and with each step forward, he began to wonder who had truly come to Dunwich, him or something that had summoned him. A pale light filtered down through the warped slats of the barn's roof as Thaddeus Gorrell ascended into the loft once more, his boots crunching over straw that smelled faintly of ozone and mildew. The whispering had ceased, replaced by a tense expectancy that choked the air. He scanned the rafters with his lantern, its wavering glow catching on something shadowed and brittle, wedged behind a rotting beam. He reached up, fingers trembling as they brushed the object. A book, nearly fused to the timber by time's cruel hand. With effort, he dislodged it, parchment flaking away in soft exhalations of dust as he held it close. The cover was leather, brittle, and patched with an oily sheen, smelling faintly of brine and decay. Its faded title, scribbled in looping script of no known language, shimmered faintly when held at an angle. Opening to the first page, he recognized English, barely. The author's penmanship danced between lucidity and madness, the ink often spiraling into sigils instead of words. The first lines chilled him. "He who counts the stars shall number his days. For each that fades, a gate opens." The entries grew more erratic. References to celestial alignments, rituals conducted under moonless skies, accounts of black fumigation rituals performed in the hills above Dunwich. There were diagrams, primitive shapes that hurt the eyes when studied too long. Worse still was one drawing, a constellation Thaddeus knew did not exist, sketched alongside a barn eerily similar to the one he now stood in. In the margin, "Only through forgetting shall they remember. Only when undone will they come." A headache bloomed behind his eyes. He sat, absorbing the sheer weight of the implications. Rumors of the disappearing stars had trickled through astronomers and fringe presses alike, dismissed as folly or error. But here was a man, perhaps mad, who theorized they were being devoured, not by distance or dust, but by the world beneath. Suddenly, the earth lurched. With a deep groaning sound, the barn trembled, hay spilled from above, lantern clattering from its hook, and extinguishing as the timbers cracked and swayed. Thaddeus gripped a beam as a low rumble shook through him, not entirely from below, but from within. The journal slid open on the floorboards, pages flipping of their own volition. The very planks beneath him pulsed, not with life but with memory. Something ancient. Then came the whispers. Not just noise now, but voices, distinguishable, calling his name, entwined with grating syllables that scraped his reason raw. Thaddeus. Gorrell knows, sees, chooses. He stumbled back as a knot of shadow pooled in the loft's far corner, stretching unnaturally across trusses and hay. The whispering resolved into a manic chant, echoing distorted verses from the journal. Thaddeus clutched the book tightly against his chest. The earthquake ceased. Silence followed. But the air remained tense, brittle. He was not alone in the loft. Not anymore. And now something below had begun to stir. The air beneath the barn was damp and choked with an odor Thaddeus could only describe as something dead remembering life. The earthquake had split the earth like flesh, revealing a narrow crevice where floor and foundation had once held firm. Drawn by the whispers, now unmistakably calling his name in rhythmic, hissing intervals, Thaddeus descended into the dark, with only the journal of the mad pressed tight to his chest and a flickering oil lamp in hand. Moss-coated stones crunched beneath his boots as he moved deeper into the subterranean hollow. The symbols from the journal pulsed in his mind, the same Ouroboros-shaped constellation now oddly absent from the sky, intricately inked beside words written in dialects that twisted his tongue when he tried to sound them out. "Thaddeus," hissed a voice, not from ahead, but from within. It echoed through the marrow of his bones, as though his very blood had learned a new language. The passage opened up into a root-choked chamber, where ancient lumber beams formed a jagged skeleton supporting the barn above. In the center sat a gaunt figure, half clad in tattered cloth, its eyes white and sightless, yet locked directly onto Thaddeus. "I bones remember what flesh forgets," it rasped, not with its mouth, but from everywhere at once. He took a cautious step closer. The figure twitched, then began to murmur. a guttural chant in a tongue that reverberated through the walls. The sound did not pass through air. It bypassed sense itself. Thaddeus watched in helpless dread as the figure's limbs contorted. A crooked grin spread across its cracked face. "You seek fame? I sought salvation. This is what remains." The journal pulsed, almost warm now, throbbing like an organic thing against his chest. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I am what was left when the pact was made. A shield against the hungry sky. Blood fed to stay the stars." Thaddeus's breath caught. The journal's references to rites, offerings to something beyond constellations, lines of stars that were not merely burning gas, but sigils in an ancient celestial lattice. The figure had once been human, perhaps even the previous bearer of the journal, but had submitted to a ritual that staved off celestial erasure at the cost of its own mind and form. You tried to stop it?" "Not stop. Delay. Always feeding, always feeding," the being hissed, its body trembling with spasmodic tension. "Now the stars die again. 6 gone tonight. Can you hear them scream?" Images erupted in Thaddeus's mind, of galaxies maimed by unseen claws, stars winking out not with a whimper, but with a crescendo of psychic agony. The figure lunged suddenly, but not to attack. It clutched Thaddeus's hand in a withered grip. "You taste like hunger. The journal has chosen." Thaddeus wrenched free and stumbled backward as vibrations rippled once again through the stone. The ground moaned, and above them, the barn groaned in response. Dust rained down from the overhead beams. No words could come to his lips. In that moment, he felt the full weight of forbidden knowledge press down on his fragile psyche. The stars weren't dying. They were being silenced. By us. By what we had once called to protect ourselves. And now, it was his turn to carry the song. Whispers tangled in his ears. Thoughts not his own swam behind his eyes. He did not flee. Thaddeus Gorrell clutched the journal of the mad, the parchment pulsing with a heat that sizzled against his fingertips. Around him, the bowels of the barn groaned and trembled with renewed violence, the earth opening in juddering convulsions like a beast stirred from unnatural sleep. Dust spiraled downward in choking curtains. The possessed figure before him, once a man, now writhing as an empty vessel borrowed by some ancient force, lurched forward, its mouth agape in silent scream. It was time. Thaddeus, numb with awe and dread, tore open the page inked in sanguine loops, the spell of awakening. He had no reference, no guide, only the compulsion etched in every fiber of his soul. He began to read. The words were wrong. They twisted in his throat, defying human articulation. They were wound with meaning not fit for those born of earth. Yet as he read, the air bowed around him, thickening, warping, a pressure squashing reality flat. The figure before him convulsed once, twice, and then exploded into a funnel of black smoke that slithered upward through the loft, merging with the rafters and disappearing beyond them. In the silence that followed, a curious muting overtook the world. Then the stars began to blink out. One by one they vanished, not with the finality of extinction, but as if erased by an unseen brush. The sky yawned wider with each snuffed light, the air itself crackling like fraying canvas. Above the collapsing barn, the heavens twisted, forming a spiral void that widened toward infinity. It was no hole, no shadow. It was absence, null incarnate, something the human mind could not parse without surrendering to ruin. Thaddeus fell to his knees in the hay-streaked dust, the journal still open and glowing eerie white. He had done it. The whispers had guided him to the ultimate discovery. But there would be no fame. A voice echoed, not in sound, but in cognition itself, repeating a truth too vast for the printed page. The stars had been locks, and they had been turned. The barn began to implode, its timbers swallowed downward into a great churning maw that had opened beneath. Thaddeus scrambled backward, slipping through the collapsing threshold just in time. Behind him, wood, earth, and light folded into themselves, and still the sky paled to that sickening void. He ran. The journal clutched tight against his chest. He did not look back. Not until the wind stopped. Not until the village bell, untouched for decades, tolled once. Not until the whisper came again, not from the earth, not from the heavens, but from inside his own skull. Now he knew what the madkeeper was. He was it. The final words of the journal burned into his memory, not as verse but as edict. When the earth speaks, only madness listens, and Thaddeus was listening.